Unmounting. What is state? State use an observable object called state to observe the changes made to the component and guide the component to behave accordingly. So basically state are the variable declared within a class-based component, or in simple terms generally we call them as a local variable. State holds some information that may change over the lifetime of component. Suppose we click on one button. On the click of button I want to get some data change. Now for that get that data change we actually have to use your state. Whatever data you are changing, we keep on saving that in a state and later on we can use that. They are mutable basically, as prop cannot be changed whereas a state can be changed. We can override the value of a state. States are basically mutable. They are generally updated by the event handlers, like we can update the state on the click, and we can also update the state on the calling the API, or there one function called set state. With the help of generally set state, we call our API and get the data, that data we set in our state. So that's where your state come into picture. Now let me show you how we declare the state, and let's do one thing. On click of button, let's try to update the state variable. So I can make one more component, or I can handle that state in a class-based component header. Now in the header, we'll show some text. Suppose under this HR tag, I'll say counter value. Now what that counter value is, we'll show that. We'll take in some H3 tag. Basically why I'm taking H3 tag, because you guys can see it better. That's the main funda. Under that I'll make one button, or in more simple term guys, let's take in the way, let's have one input box. We'll type something in the input box, and whatever we are typing in the input box, we'll display that on the under that input box, like a search bar in the page that we have. Let's draw that search bar. That make more sense in the header as compared to our counter. Now for doing that, what I'll do is under this, I'll take one input box. In this input box particularly, generally they are self-closing tags. And under that, I'll take a one p tag where I'm going to bind the state value. So in the input box, I write a one event. How to write an event? We'll say on change, basically on change in one event. On change, I'll call some value. I'll say this dot input change. You can call any method name like this. Now what I'm going to do is, as soon as you write something, I want to update the state. For doing that part, what I'll do is I'll declare one variable, say user input, suppose like that. It's blank right now. How to bind the state we already seen last time. We simply say here this dot state dot user input. Now I write a method, say input change with the ES6 form of that arrow. Now, whatever you will write will receive here by event. And I want whatever data I'm receiving now, I'll set in a state. There's one thing called this dot set state. What? I want to set a state of user input. As a JSON, we have to write key value user input with what? Event dot target dot value. By this, I'll update the state what user is typing. Let's see it's working or not. Now start typing something. See guys, whatever I'm typing, I can see it below. Do you see? What exactly happened? We define one state and we are trying to update that state value by using a set state function. Now I'll say here user text. Suppose default value I set there. I'll say user text. When you go back, by default we see user text, and when user start typing, that remove. And when I remove, it become blank, which I don't want, because what happened right now, the state value is blank. Ideally technically is doing correct, but we don't want that. We want that when user typing something show, and when user remove, just bring back the basic text. So guys, for this case you can use a ternary operator like this. We'll say event.target.value have something, then just show that, else just show user text like this. In this case, what happened? If that have a value, will show, else we just replace that with the default value will be user text. And one more thing I told you, control A, view, and do the toggle word wrap so that you don't have to scroll left and right while writing the code. If you go back to browser, Let's type something. And when I remove, see it bring back the user text. So guys, this is how exactly we bind the data from the input chain like an event to the state. As we clear with the state, and this state I can pass to any component also. So whatever data I'm writing, if I have to pass, suppose the header have some child component, we can pass. But if header have to pass to the parent component, going forward, I'll show you. For that, we have to use a callback. The next thing in the React we have to understand is called mounting a component. Component have to go through some life cycle. Why we need that life cycle? Every React component follow a life cycle where a series of methods are involved in different stage. These stages are mentioned below: mounting, updating, unmounting. Basically, what happened the lifecycle hooks? As we see this component, we don't have any control, anything running in any way. But I want to make it in a proper way that this part should run first, then second, then like that. How exactly I can do in the way that I can control the flow? For controlling the flow of your component, execution flow of the component, you use a lifecycle. It goes through three stages: mounting when the component first load, then updating when you are changing the state, and then third part is called unmounting when you're going out of the component. In the mounting, we have first of all constructor, get derived state from the prop, render, and component did mount. So constructor is the very first thing that get called. Let's do one thing. Let's make one more component by the name of home. In this, I'll show you how exactly our lifecycle hooks work, or I'll take one more component, say lifecycle. In that, I'll explain the lifecycle hooks, and we can get rid of our app component also. How? What the app component is doing? App component is just playing a one simple role to bind my component. It's using that, right? So I can get rid of that. How? I have a home component, right? Now in the home component, I'll make it as a class-based component because your life cycles can be done in a class-based component. So we have to import component also there. That is coming from React. Now I write here class home extends component, at the end export default home. Take this home directly to the index. Go to index file. Instead of app, just import home from dot slash component slash home. Instead of rendering your app as just to the home. Now app component is no more required because my home will be the one that do all the things for me. Now the home is including few things there, because going forward we have to make a display part which have a lot of things. So I'll just take this two things and put that in the home. The path need to be changed for them. Now they're directly coming from your same folder. Here we can have a constructor. Constructor will have a props, will have a super. Super will have its own props. As of now, we don't have to declare any state. We'll say render. Render will have return. In this, we're going to call the API. Return have your header and footer. First of all, we'll say fragment. In the fragment, we'll display header and footer. If I have to pass a prop to them, I can pass prop to them. I'll go back to my app. I take this header one, or I take the whole thing, go to my home, put it here. We'll remove this. I don't need a react.fragment here. I'll remove this part also now. Let's make it a bit more cleaner application that look like a proper app to us. Now, first of all, let me show you a life cycle. What a life cycle do? Life cycle is a place which help to control the component. Let me explain those life cycle here and I'll implement some of them. So basically first is called as constructor, that call first. Then you have, now basically if something we want before the rendering part, that will go in the get derived state from prop. First constructor run, then this derived state will run, then render run. And if we want something after the render, then we'll go in the component did mount. This is called when the component is rendered to the DOM. It confirm component is placed in the DOM. So this is a part which confirm that component is properly rendered. So the component did mount is particular place where we call our API. Let me give a very small example that how exactly we render this part. So component did mount is a place where we call our API. I'll say component did mount. So this part of a code going forward, when we have a API calling, no, I'll show you. I'll call a API here, get the data and set that here. and will pass to a display component and will display that there. Now, when I talk about the updating means when the state will change, what exactly gonna happen. And then we have here, after your state got updated, we have should component update and gets snapshot before update, and component did update. Updating is a phase where state and the prop of component are updated due to some user change event or by clicking or passing the key to the box. Anytime a state change happen, your updating part will run. Get derived state from a prop and render method are same discussed before. So let's see rest of the methods. Here now we have a should component update. Suppose what happened? Somebody clicking on the same button, right? Every time the same value is coming. Remember one thing, whenever the state change happen, component will re-render. To stop re-rendering of a component, we have a should component update. What it do? It will check your previous state and previous prop and compare that with the next state and next prop. It keep on comparing the value. If it find out the next value which is going to come and the previous value which is already there in a state is same, it stop re-rendering, and that can be achieved by should component update. Get snapshot before update. Let you check the value before update. Suppose this method should include component did update to avoid error notification. Now when you are trying to click on button, now you want to update the value. Before setting that into state, this can work. Initially when the component is mounting, it render guitar as example like this. Now later when the component is mounted, after completion of timer, the instrument value changed to drum. This action triggers the update phase and get snapshot before update method is called, which write a previous state message to the container. Then the component did update method execute, which write the current state in the container. Now after the writing part done, then it call component did update. So first of all, in a before get update, will get that value and update in the state, and then in the component did update specify that state got updated. And in the unmounting, basically what happened, unmounting is a phase when the component is supposed to remove from a DOM. Suppose those things I'll show you when I introduce a routing, no, there I'll show the unmounting. Component will unmount is the only method used to remove the component. Suppose you're coming out of that page, and when you come out of that page to do something, suppose a user filling the form. While filling the form, user leave the page suddenly. You can ask a user, do you really want to leave? Or you can save the data. When the user will again come back to that page, you can use the same data. React DOM.render component container is a usual method to adding the component to DOM. To unmount the component from the container, clean up the attached event handler and state. For unmounting the component, you can make call to react.unmount component at node container. What it do? It unmount that component from there. Here, every time on clicking on the button, component is incremented by 1. After 1000 seconds, the component is unmounted. Means after some seconds, component will remove from the space. Again, the unmounting part we'll see when we do the routing. React form, basically form is a very important part of any application. Why? Because suppose I'm making a shopping cart, I need a form. I'm doing a survey, I need a form. Or I'm taking any way of input, I need a form. So ultimately forms play a very important role in your application. React also a way to develop a form or say declare a form. How exactly it works, I'll show you. So particularly React forms are designed to learn user interaction with a web page. Different activity associated with the React forms are adding form, handling form, conditional rendering, submitting form, multiple input field, validating form, text area, as well as your select boxes. These are some of the components that we do in the form. I'll pick some of them and build for you. Below is example of which user acceptance, like we have a form tag, H1P input boxes like that. Ideally, the recommendation is that we try not to use a form tag, we develop the form like that, and we write our change handlers. Handling form refer to managing the data on submission when the value are changed. React forms are maintained by React component and store the component state. These changes are controlled by additional on change. So I'm going to talk about how exactly when you type something, we set a data in the state and on click on submit, we'll receive that data. Particularly, control rendering is usually preferred to display the data from the user interaction. And we have one submit handler, we have one on submit and input type submit. Ideally, we don't prefer to give an input type submit. The problem with that is when we do something like this, no, the page will refresh. We avoid that. I'll show you how exactly we do. It can have multiple input fields or a text area or a radio button. All of them need to have an on change binding. And with respect to that, we need a one on change handler that will look for the changes. Similarly, we can have here if something is not fine, we can throw the error. If everything goes well, then we can set the data in the state. Instead of alert box, more preferred way is displaying the error when user entered the invalid data. Then we can have text area. We can read the data from the text area. We can have our select boxes or a radio button. So let's start and draw that. The application which I'm picking has some more extra files. Just ignore that. All these files you're going to learn in the upcoming session. Let's make one component by the name of form. I'll make here a forms component. You can give anything to that. As of now, just to display this form, I'm picking up something. You can just ignore this part of our code as of now because this is something we are going to do in the upcoming sessions. I just want to make it look good, so I just did that some additional part. As of now, I'll just bring to the place where I'm actually display the form component to you guys. So we'll import React and then we're gonna import component because this will be a class-based component that is coming from React. After that, we'll start with class. I'll make my form component. We generally prefer to give the name as a capital letter. I just want to give one check here that yes, I was using a capital letter or not. Yes, I am using capital letter. That's perfectly correct. So we'll go back. So we'll say here forms component extends component like as usual we are doing. And at the end, we should export default our forms. So I'll paste it. Now in this, first of all, I'll write, there are multiple way people write the form. I'll show you one of them. We write render. In this render, we can have our return part. In this return part, we'll have a div whose class name is basically I'm trying to make a bootstrap thing and I'm trying to make it look good. Anyways, I'm going to explain you that going further. I'm just adding a one external bootstrap there. So the only point here is that I want to make it look good. We'll say hyphen info. We'll give one heading there. We'll say div class name panel hyphen heading. I'll say here user forms. Then again, we're gonna make a div and give the class to that as our form body. For that, we'll say panel hyphen body. Now I'll just change one thing for me. Now here, I'll start making a form. I'll say div class form hyphen group. And in this particularly, we'll give one label. I'll say, I'll take a two input that give a fair idea to you how exactly to make it. First name. Then we're gonna have one input box with that, whose class is form control. And ideally input box, we make it a self-closing tag so we don't have to close it separately. Now here, I'm not using any form tag. I'm not using any submit button. So we'll handle everything from the React itself now. Now here we'll give a value. That's what exactly we want to pick. This dot state dot name. Then after that, I'll write on change handler. On the click of a that particularly will display the thing. We'll say this dot handle change name. In the PPT, I've seen that one single function. Here I'm gonna make a separate function for two fields. Now once we're done with this first input box, I'll copy this first input box and paste it below. Here I'll change the first name to last name and the handle chain name will say handle change L name, any just to differentiate between them like that. And we'll call this state as F name and then we call the state as L name. So I make a two input boxes. After that, I'll make a simple but not as a type of submit, avoid type of submit. We'll say class name equal to btn space btn hyphen success. And in this particularly, I'll write submit. I write on change. Basically, I write here on click idly, not change. On click of that, I'm gonna call this dot handle submit. Here we'll receive all the data after submit. I'll put in a console.log going forward when to the API. you can make a post call and send the data also. So this is my form look like. Let's see how exactly it look on the browser side. We're getting some error in terms of our file. So ideally I use a forms tag as a component and I'm importing from something different, I guess. Yeah, slash form component like this. Now we'll again have a recheck on the page. So if I go to slash forms, it's saying something that state variable is not defined. Obviously correct, we have forget to do the state variable. And I'll just take out some piece of a code that should not distract you from what exactly we are doing here and what we were doing upcoming. So I'll do one thing. I'll just take this file, this line of a code, and I'll make one extra file. I'll paste it there. Or the other way of doing that is, best way is I'll make a backup of this routing file so that you want to see it. You can see it very clearly how exactly it look like. I'll make a one file, say rt_bk. Right now from my routing, no, I'll remove few things. Now in the form, it's saying something like related to state, which is although correct because we have not declared any state, but we have a state variable. So we must have a constructor. Constructor will have a super as a class-based component look like. And after that, we'll say this dot state equal to two states. One is f name, we'll take it as a blank, and other one is l name, we'll take it also as a blank. We go back, let's see something is in a place. Yeah, we have one first name and last name and one submit button. On the click of that in the console, I'll show you that we are able to receive the data what user is trying to post. So let's go back. So you have to handle change there for two functions. One is for my name, one for my L name. I'm writing a separate function, which is that's my preferred way, but we can write in the one that's how it was showing in the PPT. So we'll take this and we'll write one handle change. Now this will react on the event, and what we got is we are going to get the data, and that data will prefer to set in the state. We'll set this dot set state of what, of f name to event dot target, sorry, it will be event dot target dot value. And in the handle change, we have another handle change that is for our L name. So make sure you give same name to that. That is our L name. Handle change L name. And this time what you want to set is L name. So these two functions will set the data as soon as you done with the typing in the state. And at the end, we write one handle submit. I'll say handle submit. Generally, when you submit the data, no, we always generate one random number, so that while submitting, we must have a unique ID to that. So I'll say where ID equal to, I'll use a normal math operation. I'll say math.floor and math.random and R multiply by 1000. So 10,000, 4-digit random ID will generate. Now I'll create a data which I want to submit. So I'll say data equal to ID as ID we already got. Now we'll say name as your this dot state dot f name, and we'll say last name is this dot state dot l name, like that. This is my last name. So this is I create a data. Now what I'll do for this section, I'll just do console.log data, just to make sure that what we are posting, are we able to receive that or not. So what we did till now, we make a one form. On the click of that, we're writing our on submit button. On submit handler is there, and we are setting the data in the state. On the click of button, we should see in the console. Let's just verify that. I'll clear the console. I'll type first name as John and second name as Mary. Now guys, when I submit it, see, I'm getting ID, name and last name. Going forward, when you're going to learn the API calling at this particular place, you'll make a one fetch call and send the data to the database also. Thank you.